computer. Hi, this is Kelly from America's Finest Resumes. I am here with Dr. Dennis Ely, and Dennis is a federal job search expert. He also has other absolutely lovely credentials. He is a decorated veteran, and I'm going to just let him go through his entire background to help folks understand why I invited him to speak today. Federal resumes are a bit of, I call him a bear. I try to make him sound snuggly like a teddy bear, but sometimes they can be more of a growly beast, kind of.
Okay.
Um, and you really, what I found is most helpful is to have someone who's actually worked within the federal government and actually helped veterans through the process. Since this video series is helping, we're focusing on veterans, although I do write federal resumes for civilians as well, and this will be helpful for you too. Um, I I'm going to focus today more on veterans. So, Dennis, thank you for your service. Thank you for all you do for military outreach ministries. Thank you for everything you do for our veterans. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell them a bit about your background, that would be great.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Kelly, for inviting me to be on your podcast show. It's a pleasure to be able to share some of the nuggets and knowledge that I have on writing a federal resume. My name is Dennis Ely Jr. I served my country for 26 years, and back about maybe 15 years ago, down January 2010, I got hired as a human resource specialist with the federal government, and it was a pleasure. 2 months after being hired, I didn't realize it though, but the federal government, the president had started a campaign, wanted the federal agencies to help writing resumes, teaching it with one of the warriors. So I was asked to be the Wonder Warrior coordinator. And it was a full-time job for me. First, I didn't know what to expect. I'm hoping that I go out here and teach that the federal government will support me by hiring, at least interviewing these veterans. And my boss assured me, she said, yes, Dennis will help you. We will support the program, you know. So anyway, things took off. I didn't know, I wasn't trying to be one of the few federal resume experts. It just fell in my lap. And I got the tools and I had the people around me, the HR specialist to I go and ask questions to. And then I start teaching. And then I realized people weren't really getting it. The When the Warriors weren't really getting it because I didn't realize I was speaking above their understanding of writing a resume, and then I had to dumb it down. And when I received some feedback from two excellent leaders at the at Balboa Hospital, then I began to break down and gain a better understanding of how to teach and reach the people. And so I dummied down. I had a resume. I think I called it ABCs of writing a federal resume because I was making it clear that this is going to be easy. I'm making it that simple. Then I grew, then began to get guys hired, interviewed and hired. And then I was challenged to come up with a good model for the battalions because a lot of the guys were discharging and they want a federal job. So I implemented and created a program called Wounded Warrior Boot Camp, 2-day program. Went to Camp Pendleton. Um, First day was theory. I went over everything theoretical about writing a federal resume, you know, how to break down your collateral duties. If you have something, one of the few collateral duties you have that you want to pursue a career in. Um, Went through all that day one. And day two is for them to write their own resume. One thing we had found before I get into that piece is a lot of HR folks, we were writing the resumes for the Warriors, And then when they went to go interview, they couldn't speak to their resumes. Management said, "Hey, we can't hire these guys." So what happened was, when I created the 2-day boot camp, that what had me teach them and let them write their own resume. So I taught them day one, and then on day two, I had them write their own resume, and but taught them how, and that was a win-win, because they really understood. Because we all know, you teach a person how to fish, they will fish, know how to fish, and get food for the rest of their lives instead of you giving it to them. And so that was the model. And the first class I done at Balboa, the guy was so excited, so happy. The owner, I'm not the supervisor of it, and so we had a shoe in. We were there every month. I was doing a Wonder Warrior boot camp in the class. The class size, it was about 15 to 20 Marines, and then I invited the spouses to come in. As time went on, we ended up hiring, before I got done with that, ended up hiring, uh, helping 500 plus
Wow.
when the Warriors get federal jobs. So yeah, it's a pleasure. Glad to have done that, and I continue to help as I know as I am no longer a one aware coordinator. I'm not an HR specialist anymore. I'm an EEO manager with the federal government. So
Well, thank you so much. And I thank you on behalf of not just veterans, but my family. I'm actually the only member of my family that does not have a special need, a challenge. Although I have a weight problem, but
we're not gonna talk about that.
yeah, we'll talk about that. And I actually have a Marine who's threatening to whip me into shape, Klein. That'll be
That's
another
Marine
show.
for you.
If he doesn't kill me, we'll put something on there. Um,
He is showing you love.
yeah. So, but each member I have in my family, I have a brother who has some developmental disabilities, and
Hmm.
epileptic, and my niece is autistic, and we have different things, and certainly folks, it gives them such a wonderful level of confidence and just a spiritual fulfillment to
Hmm.
have a job and to be contributing to society. And so thank you for all your work with EEO, because you're helping organizations, the government, and
Hmm.
get people who will contribute and who are so appreciative of the jobs because they've maybe not been
Yes.
given the opportunity in the past. And it certainly is a great, you know, I
Right.
I'm a Christian, so I'm going to say it's doing God's work. So thank you so
That's
much.
right. That's
Um,
right.
and uh, I write regular resumes as well as federal resumes. And unlike many resume writers do not like to write federal resumes because they are somewhat labor intensive.
Hmm.
And especially when you're writing for the military, they'll upload sometimes 50, 60, 70 pages of military documentation you're digging through. And I do agree it's best if it's a collaborative process because they need to understand the strategy that went into the resume and what was asked for on the job announcement and marry the two and be able to speak to it. So I applaud you because I know that the method that you found was through a lot of trial and error. And I had that with vets I was helping as well, is I would get all the information and I would, put it into a beautiful form and hand them the resume. But then, if they do get called for interviews, they need that. And it's such a part of the process of writing the CARs, the challenge action results that also help on behavioral interviews. And and I know that, like I said, resume writers don't often like to write the federal resumes.
Hmm.
I know that it must be even more of a challenge for folks who are not writers and are trying to, I like to say, put the sausage together, trying to look at all
Okay.
their experience and their resume and the military language,
Hmm.
and then look at the job announcements and say, how do I put this together now in a way that's going to sell me? Um, so one of the things that I wanted you to kind of explain is if folks are looking at this, they're looking at the job announcements and they're looking at their resumes and their military um, experience, like what process do you go through? Like, what are you looking for? Because we're looking for quantifiable metrics, we're looking for achievements. Like, is there a process that you recommend of looking at the material and comparing it to the job announcement and um, putting everything together? Like, is there a way that you start? Do you have a certain template you use or an outline?
Yeah, when I teach and or help someone determine what job they want to apply to, there's several different tools out there, crosswalk, that they can look at and see what their military MOS or NECs convert into the private sector. I mean, that's one good way of starting. And as I'm talking with them, I'll ask them, what is it that um, what field that you have a desire or a passion to explore? You know, maybe it's something they've done in their military career. Maybe let's say a purchase card holder, someone was in charge of that, and they may have ran the program and they love working, managing a purchase card, um, itemizing payments, updating the accounting data that's required. And so, but they were a storekeeper. That's a good skill set, to start. But what I find sometimes is um, some people don't want to do the job that they have experience in when they get out. Those people are to have the hardest time, I feel, if they want to explore something new with no experience. When I talk to them, I recommend to them, how about building a resume on the experience that you have? And then on the side, you can probably build that desire, that passion that you have later, because you want to be able to get a job when you get out, to be able to pay the bills. You know, you got to still eat, those sorts of things. And sometimes, I know one case where a person wanted to try something else, but she had 16 years of logistics. And with my own knowledge, logistics crossed right over to private sector. You could probably get a job in logistics within probably a month, at least get interviews within a month. You build a resume. But she wanted to get into a field, was more of a servanthood type of field. She wanted to help other veterans. She could get into a job. I said, yeah, but you have enough experience where you could probably get a job starting a GS job, 7 or 8 or 9. She considered it later on. I found out that's what she ended up doing, and she took my advice. But when I get with a person, look at what skills they have, experience they have, and it's a phrase that I coined called, yeah, look at your civilian rank. Okay, your civilian rank is based on your experience, not what you got paid in the military. And what most guys do, well, they say I got paid. I was getting, let's say, $90,000. And when they go to USA Jobs, they start looking for jobs that pays 90,000 or more, but then they don't have the experience for that job, and they waste a lot of time. And when I meet them, they say I've applied 10 jobs and I still didn't get hired. And I say, well, let's just look at your skill set. Let's look at your resume. Now let's look at your civilian rank. And what I do is I teach them how to look at a job announcement. Each job announcement has the assessment attached to it. So you can open up the assessment. So those are the questions that they're going to ask you. And the scoring goes like most of the time it's the E or the D, the last one, you get the most points for. That's just saying that you're an expert to do the job. The first one, A, will be you have no experience. Then B would normally be, do you have education only? And then it will say C, for each letter you choose has a point system. But the one that says you're an expert, that's the one that gives you the most points. So if you're looking at a job that's a GS7, for example, in logistics, and if the question, and you can't say you're an expert, but you're saying you have some experience, more likely your score won't be within the best qualified. I know I'm kind of getting into a little deeper level in this.
No, I think it's helpful because
Okay.
it's difficult when you look through the job vacancies and you do see and you open up, different links and you to understand
Hmm.
really what's going into how they are quantifying your skills. And it helps me as a resume writer to actually speak to a an expert because I have 30 years in corporate America, but it's
Hmm.
different. It's
It
a
is.
different process. It's extremely
Yes.
different. And you need to understand when you're serving and I've been reading different books and reaching out to different experts. And with each one, it helps me to serve
Yeah.
better because my goal is to give you the best
Hmm.
tool possible to
Yeah.
open the door for you. And I look through the questionnaires, the assessments, the
Hmm.
everything that I can get. And because when I'm and that's one of the things I was going to speak to is I think a lot of people are getting rejected, just like they do in the corporate world. In the corporate world, we have systems called applicant tracking systems, which the government has similar systems, but they're even pickier than they are in the corporate world. We can't put um, you don't put pictures, you don't put columns, you
Right.
don't put anything because you're going to trip up
Mhm.
the machine. And I think a lot of people, they don't know enough of the details, which you're being so kind to give. So they don't know that what the format, and maybe we can
Mhm.
chat about that, like how long the resume should be. And
Yeah.
obviously we want the format to be simple, but they're not really, they write one resume that's
Mhm.
based on their experience, but not based on the job announcement, and they're uploading it. And sometimes I just recently had a veteran um who came to me and he didn't understand why his resume was pretty much automatically, he could tell it was automatically rejected by the federal system. And I said, well, he knew enough to put certain things on there,
Mhm.
but it looked more like your standard 1 or 2 page corporate resume with a couple of things stuck in, but
Yeah.
formatted incorrectly and with a lot of fields missing. And so, I'll tell you from being a resume writer the differences, and then I'm going to let um, Dennis elaborate. So in corporate America, the standard resumes, it's really one page for an applicant who has like less than 10 years experience,
Mhm.
and two up to 2 pages for someone who has more. We usually don't go above 2 pages. We don't include um, references. We don't include any of these kinds of information. And we do try to match it, which is similar to the government resumes. We look at the job postings. We try to
Mhm.
capture as many keywords as possible to get you through the applicant tracking system, and we try to keep the format as simple. But sometimes we'll put in a little bit of flair. But the government
Mhm.
systems don't really do well with. Uh, I don't want to say they're boring, but they don't appreciate the kind of creativity that I sometimes put into a corporate resume. So they
Right.
don't particularly sometimes like they don't like tables, they don't like columns, they don't like there's usually a few particular fonts that are friendly, like Arial and Calibri, Times New Roman.
Times New
But if
Roman.
you get into non-standard fonts and you
Hmm.
start, uh, you know, highlighting and doing these different things, you can trip up the system. It's a bad thing. And then also if you don't include, you're supposed to put the, with each job, the weeks, the number of hours you worked in a week, what type of a job
Hmm.
it was, the address, the your supervisor, the name,
Hmm.
the phone number, the whether the email address, do they have
Yeah.
permission to contact them? That's almost always missing from the folks. And it's also their applicant tracking systems are much more sensitive. And I said, the reason why they don't think you have enough experience is because you did a year-to-year format. And I believe the government systems prefer month, year, so they want the month and the year, or sometimes it doesn't capture the information correctly. So they're a lot trickier.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you really need to do your homework, because you're going to
Hmm.
spend a lot of time on something, you're going to be uploading it, and you're going to get rejected by a nasty old computer system. You want to If you're going to be rejected, it's better to get rejected by a government person, where at least hopefully you get a human touch. So, but
Right.
I'll let Dennis go through he's more of an expert. I've certainly written hundreds of federal resumes, but Dennis has written thousands, and he can tell you, what the format should look like, how you're matching
Hmm.
things up, and why he's maybe seen most folks get rejected, because they think it's because they don't have the experience. A lot of times that's
Okay.
not the case.
Right. Okay, that's good. I really appreciate your sharing. I was trying to put a book up. I'm gonna say this first and then I'm gonna answer your questions. I'm not trying to, I don't get any money for this, but I
No.
was on a project, want everybody to know, but there's a book from Miss Kathleen Troutman. It's called Job Seeker's Guide, sixth edition. I was approached and I was in her book. I was interviewed. And in this book, her and I both worked on it and we put some good work into it. It's her 10 steps to writing a federal resume. Um, and the publication team, you'll see my name in there with hers and others that helped with that project.
And
Um,
I thank you so much, because I have read Catherine's book, and I did chat with her. And I
mhm,
promoted, she was kind enough to give a free, in honor of Veterans Day. She actually gave a free um veterans federal
mhm,
for military
training. So,
spouses and veteran. It was
mhm,
wonderful. So
yes,
um and I am going to put that information, because I actually bought that through Amazon. It's very
yes,
affordable. She actually
mhm,
has a couple of books. She does a federal guide as well,
yes,
which
mhm,
is which is wonderful. And I'm going to
yeah,
put that information. She also, on her website, she and I'm going to say Catherine is a competitor, but I
yes,
I believe um, when we are serving heroes, we we serve them to the best of our ability,
mhm,
and we give them the resources that they need. And if that sometimes means pointing them in the direction of a competitor who has decades more
mhm.
experience, I'm more than willing to do that. And I'm going to actually post all of that information, because
It's
if you can
helpful.
afford it,
Mhm, and
sometimes I was chatting with Dennis about the executive level federal resumes, which are even more um
mm,
challenging. I think they can sometimes go up to 10 pages. And if you can afford it and you're able to go to Catherine's. She provides some really wonderful resources that are almost a full service solution, because
mhm,
she can lead you through this process. And Dennis
yeah,
can as well. Dennis actually is he's driven, he's really a man of service. So I'm going to thank you so much for that, because
yeah,
he doesn't get paid, but he dedicates most of his life to just really serving others. And it's a great I know there's a place in heaven for you, but we're going to try to be good to you here on earth too. Yeah, but
right.
he provides a Military Outreach Ministries, where through his organization, he's providing a
Hmm.
lot of free workshops
Hmm.
to our veterans and our military families. And I don't know if you want to speak a little bit about some of the stuff that you're doing through Military Outreach Ministries. And as you
Yeah,
also feed them, which is fabulous. I was
I
looking on
know.
about the
Right.
food and
Did you want me to
everything.
go? Yeah. Can I go back to your other prior question
Yes,
and then
yes,
come up to
definitely.
this? Yeah. About the resumes, what I recommend that military do, veterans do, I even teach it when I teach, is to have one master resume, which going to have all the skills that you have that you wish that you want to pursue, possibly. Have them all on one resume. And then let's say, for me, I was a jet mechanic, but I had training as a the skill set because I've always been a trainee guy. I was been the petty officer in charge of training throughout my entire career. So that was one skill set that I had. Another skill set I had in my resume, master resume, was HR work. You know, you can actually, for human resource, you can pull the training stuff and add it to the HR resume because HRs are part of training. So I had purchase card. I was the material control guy. So I had those different skill set on my resume. And so you can do the same thing with the skills that you have. So when you see a job announcement, let's I'm gonna use myself because I'm the only person I want to rather talk about, in these examples. I saw a job for HR before I retired. I pulled all my HR skill sets that from my master resume and put it on one resume. And so you get the job announcement and you look at the keywords, now on the federal side, we don't no longer search. There's not a computer that search for keywords anymore, but you need the keywords in your resume to show that you're targeting that job set. HR will be training. It will be um, different awards. Civilian HR will be using databases. You will need to, have maybe hiring, of course, um, firing. You have to know how to do those things as an HR professional. And so, I will put those on my resume for the HR job. And so when you get your resume together for the federal, um, you just the number of pages. Let me say this now because I know you have mentioned to it as well. Um, for a person with less than 5 years of military, experience to apply, a resume need to be or can be around 3 to 5 pages. Okay, that's as much as experience. That's what your school, your training, all that needs to be on the federal resume. If you have more than 5 years, going on 10 years, 15, et cetera, then your resume can be no longer than 10 pages. Okay. The thing with us is the federal side is when you apply for a job, okay, if you apply for an external job, a job that where all US citizens can apply to, a veteran's resume go to the top. Granted that he or she made minimum qualifications, met the minimum quals on that job. When a veteran applies to an internal job announcement, they don't float to the top. They compete with everybody else that's applying, that's internal to the federal government that's applying. So for a veteran, when you see a job announcement, sometimes you'll see one job posted twice. You'll see one that's posted is internal, and then you'll see the same job posted for external. So for the veteran that's already working in the federal government, you need to apply to both. Okay. And the better you have the better opportunity applying to the external because your resume floats to the top. All vets float to the top if you score above 70 on the assessment. You have to score above 70 on the assessment. You won't know it, but you need to make sure your resume is tailored to that job and that you answer the questions, the assessment questions. You need to be best qualified. If you're not the expert in that on that one question, if you have too many where you're not the expert, you may not meet the cutoff of 70. So what that means is if you're applying for a GS11 and you can't say you're an expert, then your civilian rank is not a GS11. You need to find a GS9 job for that same position, but a GS9, a step down, and then hopefully you can see if you can mark expert. If you can mark expert on all the assessment questions, and then make sure those questions that they're asking you are in your resume. Because what's going to happen once you get score above a 70, a person, HR specialist, is going to read your resume. What that's called rating. We're going to rate your resume. A person, not a computer, a person going to sit back and read all those resumes of the people who made the cutoff. So once we get the resume, we're going to read. You say you're an expert. When I was to do it, I was to look at do can they really do the job? And I'm going off of the job announcement, and because the what's on the job announcement, the manager had sent to HR so they can post. One thing about the federal side, we separate. Management don't get involved with the posting and the reviewing of resumes at the beginning. The managers get the resumes at the end once HR has gone through them all. Because when we go through a resume, a person said they're best qualified, but if we can't see that experience in your resume, all you did is smart ease to go to the next step. If your resume don't speak to the skill set on that job announcement, you're gonna the HR specialist has the authority to lower your score and then take you off the running. That's why it's important for as a job seekers to make sure the resume is tailored to that job announcement. And then when you read the assessment questions, maybe you didn't have that question in your resume, but if you know you're an expert at it, add that question in a way of the skill set that you've done that job into your resume. So then when the HR person reviews your resume, they can see the skill set there. And then if they see everything in your resume, you say you're an expert, then you get referred to management. That's when you would get an email to you say your resume was forwarded to management for their review. Once management gets it, then they look through. Now it's subjective. The manager goes through them all and decides who he wants to interview.
And I do
So
want
if
to mention again what you had said about Catherine
mm,
Troutman, because
yeah,
that book, and I do recommend that anybody, because even if you're going to hire a resume writer to write it, um,
mhm,
it's an extremely helpful book in terms of the process, but in
yeah,
terms of understanding why you shouldn't just be looking at that vacancy announcement itself. You should be
mhm,
opening all those links
yeah,
because everything should echo back your
mhm,
experience. And you'll
yeah,
notice on the assessment, the questions, that there'll sometimes be keywords and themes
mhm,
that might not be included in the job posting. And you're going to want to pull those from the
yeah,
assessment and put them right into the resume. And
mhm,
one of the other things that I find is helpful, I don't know, Dennis, if you've ever used something called JobScan, but it's a tool and you can paste
mhm,
the job posting and you can paste your resume and it can tell you how many keywords you actually picked up. I use that for corporate,
okay,
but I also use that for federal because you can see then and it'll tell you you didn't plug these things in and you can then go in and hopefully plug it in and then you can put your thinking cap on, and you can
yeah,
also think about you want to put in, and I don't know if you do it, I do it in capital letters, but, put in those little subheadings so that the person who's reading like hundreds of resumes can see
Hmm.
that subheading and then see how you really fit, and so that you're the
That's
you know that
qualified.
that perfect candidate for them.
Hmm.
Whereas if they're, which is terrible, and people, please do not be one of those people that has the
Yeah,
blocks that are this big of text,
that's good.
and
Yeah, you're right. You're right about
it's
that. Yeah.
people do
Short
not want to
paragraphs.
read short
They don't.
paragraphs under
Hmm.
subheadings.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
if you qualify, and this is one of the things I'm going to ask you about, Dennis, as well, because you want to stack those cards as much in your favor. And unfortunately, many of our vets do not come out of service unscathed. They have, they have disabilities, or they have things that,
Yeah.
and you should, if there is a direct hiring path, if there is, Schedule A and these different things, which I can have, I was just dealing with a vet, and he did not know about these
Yes,
programs
they
and did
don't.
not
Right.
list them on his resume. And by listing them and by uploading the documentation that you're required to, that helps put
Mm.
you at that top of the list where you belong. Because, like Dennis, I didn't mention all of your, because I had such a hard time with the missions. I mess them up all the time, but enduring freedom and all these different things that you
Hmm.
were on.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, you you earned that top ranking. I know, in corporate
Yeah.
America, I sat with the view of the Long Island Sound in a cushy seat with 12 types of diet soda and free lunch every day. I don't think I don't think that you know, I don't think that I deserve, if it's between me and someone who was, 120-degree weather and was sitting on a tank and was doing all this stuff and
Yeah.
logistically, I'm thinking maybe you earned something a bit more than I did. So, maybe if you can explain, because one of the things that I was really interested in, and I've actually reached out to some folks to try to make things a little bit easier for the folks that I serve, is
Hmm.
that, and one of my vets, I call him Mr. Relentless. If you looked him up in the dictionary, you looked up relentless, there he'd be. He found out,
Uh,
and he's helped me with all of these things, but he found out how to find, selective, what is the term? The folks that actually help people that qualify for some of these special hiring paths. He
yeah,
he
selective
was able
service
to,
reps.
yes, and introduce himself
Hmm.
and highlight his resume and find out about roles that he could directly, apply
Yeah.
to. And he mentioned it to me because, like most vets, he's like, I want to help my
Yeah.
community and, get the word out
Hmm.
there. And so I said, I have to ask Dennis about this because I want to do a lot more about this, because there, in addition to the competitive hiring, there's a direct
Hmm.
hiring process.
Yes.
And if you could maybe explain the different paths. And I was also interested because I said, and I'm thinking your wife's going to appreciate getting a shout out here too, is our veterans aren't the only heroes. They have that support back home, and our military
Exactly.
spouses are the
Hmm.
unsung heroes. I have
Yes.
so many military spouses that have struggled getting roles because of, um, gaps from deployments, because of different
Hmm.
things, and yet they were the glue that held the family together. They're the
Yeah.
backbone of our nation, and
Hmm.
there are actually paths for them as well. There's not
Yes.
just veterans preference points, but there are paths
Hmm.
for our military spouses as well. And I don't think a lot of folks just naturally, they think about that military to civilian transition, but they don't consider the federal government. And I really think that the federal government, in a way, they focus more on
Hmm.
giving opportunities to our vets and our military spouses. So maybe if you could talk about the preferences given and where folks should note those on their resume, and how they can maybe reach out to, different organizations or different folks to be a little bit
Yeah.
more, I don't want to say aggressive, but assertive about getting the job.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. There are a lot of preferences that the veteran can also apply for, have, and share, as well as the military spouses. And the federal government, those are laws. So the federal government has to follow the law. It's just the word, getting the word out to the people so that they understand that they have rights and they can, I'm a spouse. I don't know if I can get a federal job. How's that gonna? But they can put that in their now on their resume. This I recommend on the top of their resume. I have people put besides their name, put their if they're a veteran, 30%, put 10-point vet. If they have a Schedule A letter, put Schedule A letter. If they're a spouse, or military spouse, put military spouse. If they are a surviving spouse, where their military husband got killed, died, whatever, they can get a letter called derived preference, which is they get their spouse's um, 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 disability benefit. It could be 100%. They get that, and they can use that on their resume, so they get a chance to use their deceased husband's or wife's VA benefit on their resume, so they get treated as a veteran, and that's called derived preference. Now, even though the person listed on their resume, they have to upload the proof. See, federal government is all about proof. You can say it all you want to, but we need to see the proof too. So you got to have the letter from VA, a veteran disability organization. If you have a Schedule A, upload that into your in USA Jobs. You can have all your documents uploaded there. And then, as you know too, Ms. Kelly, that once a person applies to a federal job and you get done with the assessment, it's going to ask you to now upload your documents. If all your documents is in your account in USA Jobs, you just click and add them to your resume and submit your resume package to the hiring manager, to the HR folks, and then they go through it all once the time is needed. But a Schedule A, how that helps you. For a regular job, when it's posted, they collect the resumes, and the manager have interviewed, and then now the manager's, okay, I'm choosing this person right here. Let's say the person's name is Kelly. They want to hire Kelly because Kelly blew the interview away, great resume, and we want to hire her. You are no more hire. What happens is before HR sends you the job, um, the notification that you were selected for the pre-hiring piece, they have to check the database and see if there's anybody like this place from their job, military spouse that also qualifies for the job, so they get preference. And so they look there if there's a hit for the job, job title, the pay band, the GS, whatever the number job series is, and the pay grade. If there's a hit in the PPP program, down, if that person qualifies, you would never know that you were selected, Kelly. But once this person here qualifies and they'll verify the gaining activity, losing activity, and go through that process. If this person is hired, it qualifies and that person gets the job offer and that person gets hired. So anybody, but now the same example, let's say you were hired, the hiring manager met you at a job fair, you told them you had a Schedule A letter, and you qualify for the job for Squetch, and the manager wants to hire you, and he put your information in, and then you send him or her your Schedule A letter to show proof. Now it's different. The hiring manager don't need to go through PPP. Now, because you have a Schedule A letter, which states it bypasses the BPP process because they're hiring somebody with disabilities. Disability is always a huge uh, um, They're gonna say it's a qualification, but if you have a disability, or if you have a Schedule A letter, you meet the Department of Defense, Department of Navy, Army, all those branches hiring. I'm gonna say a quota, but there are so many percentages that the military has to hire people with disabilities or targeted disabilities. So you get to be hired. The manager knows it, that I am when I interview Kelly, I want her and he's going to get you. So if you have a Schedule A letter, you need to put it out there,
Right.
because especially if the hiring manager knows you, if he met you already, he can bring you on just like that. And the hiring process
You
is
had
faster.
mentioned a list. You had mentioned a list that they use. Uh, how does somebody get on the list? Is it just by applying through USA Jobs, or is there like a more direct way that someone who has a
Yeah,
Schedule A letter could get on the list?
there's a program. I don't know how many managers use it, but called Jan. And they have a list of um, everybody for looking for jobs that has a Schedule A letter. And so when hiring managers want to look for somebody, they can, because USA Jobs, the whole process takes too long sometimes, and they want to hire somebody right away, they'll go to that list, the Jan list, and see who is on there that that can probably meet their hiring needs. And if they find you on there, they'll bring you in, do a quick interview with you, go over the job. And one thing about Schedule A, you don't have to be best qualified for the job. You can show that you have great potential and that you can do the work. Hiring managers can use that. And what we do as EEO practitioners, the one that's a disability program manager, we also help them um, um, kind of advertise, market that program to hiring managers. So it's like, well, there's a shortage of nurses. Now, what we do is, if there's a pool of nurses that graduate that have a Schedule A letter, then they can be marketed to the hospital, and the hospital can go through that list before they go to post a position on USA Jobs. That's how some people get hired without going through the USA Jobs process.
Wow. That's I think a really helpful thing to know. So I'm actually going to reach out to all my folks who've shared with me that they have that Schedule A, and I'm going to look up
Mhm.
Jan. It's J like John, A like Apple, and like Nancy.
.org.
And yeah, I'm gonna look that up, and I'll put that in our comments and in the list at the end, because
Hmm.
I just think that's gonna be super helpful to folks. And
Yes.
if you can fast track yourself, I always think we should all be our own best advocates. And
Hmm.
you've been so helpful to everyone. I'm looking through everything that you have covered. Because really, I've had someone that contacted me that was so frustrated because they were literally digging through, they were going from one website to another, from one page to and trying to put it all
Yeah,
together.
it's
And
hard. Yeah.
it was hard.
Hmm.
And especially it's a stressful but a hopeful time when you're transitioning.
Hmm.
Because I'm the eternal optimist. I always believe that God has a plan for us, and that we
Yes.
just have to be open and listen
Hmm.
to it. Because you were speaking about this person that you said, well, you have all this experience and I know you enjoy serving. What I have found is that you will not even anticipate the way in which, like you said, when you were coming out and you were like, you kind of fell into this, but look at all the people that you've
Yeah,
helped. And your goal was probably to feed a family, right? It was like
it was.
that was the primary goal. you know well,
Exactly.
it's getting harder and harder. We're like, you
Right.
know but you just don't know. It's like an incredible gift. And all I can think of is that thing that you do on the side can sometimes be the thing later in life that becomes the
Hmm.
thing. I always wrote on the
Yeah.
side. because I couldn't be a starving writer. I need to eat, and I got a
Right.
family to take
We
care of.
gotta eat.
You gotta eat, I get a little cranky. But then later in life, I just,
Yes,
started my own business, and my husband and I like serving vets. We're married on Veterans Day weekend. We love, I've
wow.
got Eagles. Like I would steal that logo if I could, but you're a man of God, I'd go to hell and I can't.
It's,
You can tell I love
it's
the Eagles
trademark.
from mine too. I just love it.
Yes, that's good.
But
You did mention to me earlier you want me to share a little bit what we do, what I do on
yeah, I want to. And
besides.
also because you don't just help with the federal resumes, it's really
Oh,
a whole network
hmm
of love and support that you're giving to folks. And Lord knows, especially this time of year, we need to,
hmm
folks
yes,
should know. And unfortunately, you're only in the San Diego area, which is far away from us. We're in Florida, but maybe
hmm
folks from your area are listening and they can show up to some of the things you're doing this season.
yes, yes. We blessed to be able to be used by God to reach out to our community, our veteran community, and we try to be available. We just me it was us, Wonder Warrior Project, and Kids for Peace, and we partnered together to go to about 10 schools in the San Diego Unified District, and they welcome us. What they had done, this is the second year, they write Christmas cards and letters to that I send to military ships. And so it was a blessed time. It was a great time. They allow us to speak to them, and the kids were very attentive, very respectful. It was a great time. I really enjoyed it. I just received the pictures of that, and I've been sharing them a little bit with Wonder Warrior Project people and stuff. So, in our next endeavor, we're currently in the process of getting our first um, independent veterans home. um, so we're going to get that started, hopefully January 1st, that we can open it up and have a few veterans on my waiting list already. So we're going to that will be to help veterans that don't have a home, and the services that I have, resumes and et cetera, jobs. I have a person that's going to come in, teach about financial stewardship and different things. So they're not going to, my veteran home is not going to be, they're going to be sitting around. They're going to be able to get some good education and also a good Bible studies for those who wish to have it. So that's our next mission. And every year we do two main events, a breakfast in May, and then we did a concert in the Veterans Service in November. So we've been pretty busy. And then besides our regular weekly services and our food bank on Fridays for those in the San Diego area, we also have a church app. So more ministries, you can download our church app and you can stay connected. We have our events on there, some good resources for people even far away. I've done resume coaching to people away from San Diego and help them with their resumes and help them get started. And, some people they want people to write for them. They get, understand that too. But those who want to do it themselves, I'll provide a coaching, with them, and from the beginning to the end. I even the last two customers I had, even they had me on Zoom, and they as they were taking their assessment, I was able to help them answer the right, the questions correctly and help them understand what was needed because they ask you for forms and stuff. So yeah, so do quite a bit to help the community out and be a part. And I mean, this is my calling. Once I finish my federal career, I'm gonna give myself another 5 years, and then I'll be, I look to have maybe 3 or 4 transition homes, independent living homes by then, and just continue to move forward and enjoy life until God, My number's up. Yeah, and my
It's just
family, they
begun.
really supportive.
It's you.
Yes, I
Well,
want to get this.
I really think that you've been an incredible help, and I wanted to say, I just in you speaking, and I'll speak offline about this. I'd love to partner with you. I'm going to put together a curriculum and courses, and I'd love to, because even like we had spoken about context, challenge, action, results. I think by
Mhm,
folks as they're putting together their achievements and they're answering their assessments and they're helping in that collaborative process. They're also what in effect they're doing is they're preparing for interviews. And I know that
mhm.
there's ways that we could partner where we could help folks. And one of the things I forgot to ask you, should folks be, because I know Catherine recommends in her book that they not just, I think it's hers. I've read so many different books about federal
Mhm.
resumes at this point, but I believe it was Catherine that said they should do the USA Jobs Resume Builder as well as the uploading of the resume. It might be somebody else's book, but do you recommend both?
I do. I do recommend both, and because it keeps the job seeker honest, and they fill in the right blocks when you do the builder. Um, for myself, I have a template that looks just like the resume builder. And so I share my template with clients, and then I recommend they also build one and give them a little bit of time to learn it because it's a lot to chew on at one time. And so they can have it because it's really important. And then some agencies will not accept a uploaded resume. They will only accept a resume from USA Jobs.
Right, so it's good to be
Mhm.
comfortable with both. And I'm
Yes.
gonna second what you said about, because I found, some clients, they want to apply to several different federal jobs.
Mhm.
And it is helpful to have that one master that is
Mhm.
maybe several pages long that you can adapt to each job, so that it's easier. So I think the more organized you can be and
Mhm.
gathering all your documents, because you're going to have to prove everything. And I'll tell you something, because in corporate America I've worked at a lot of big public companies where we went through internal and external audits.
Mhm.
And people get cranky if they have to ask you for stuff. So
Yeah.
you don't want people to be cranky. You want to be that delightfully organized person that they're thanking for being so organized, because a bureaucrat's
Mhm.
life is tough enough. They don't need like
Yeah.
more follow-up items. So and I'm going to thank you again. I'm also going to
Can I
tell
can
you
I
I'm
make one
so
more comment?
impressed. Oh, sure.
Yeah, about the accepted service agencies. There's uh, about 10 or 12 of them. CIA, FBI. Um, I was at a career fair once, and there was a CIA. I've always been intrigued with the work they do. And I went over there and talked to the manager. Hey, so we start talking about resumes, recruiter, and she told me that they don't want the federal type resumes. They prefer a private sector resume. So anyone that you run across that want to apply to one of the accepted services, which are, I can name I have a list right here: Federal Reserve System, Central Intelligence Agency, Defense Intelligence Agency, U.S. Department of State, FBI, General Accounting Office, Agency for International Development, National Security Agency, Postal Service. There's a few more. They won't
I
want
will
to.
include that information
Yes.
in our notes, because I think it's important to note. But what I think it's
Hmm.
also is, if you're transitioning, I think having a federal and a corporate resume is
Yes,
really, really
I
helpful.
agree.
And
Hmm.
once you've gone through that whole laborious process of doing a
Yes.
federal resume,
Hmm.
I would start with the federal resume. I always do this whenever somebody buys a package, because
Mhm.
you've done such intense
You have a lot of work that
research,
you can
and
yep,
you can carve that very
easily,
easily
yep.
down into the two-page one, and you
Mhm.
can make it go in different directions. Because sometimes, I always say the military works people within an inch of their lives, and they're skilled for like
Mhm.
5 different things, and sometimes
Yep,
they're looking at two
that's true.
different things. So once you
Mhm.
have that master federal
Yes.
resume, you can so easily turn that
Yep,
into
pull.
a couple of,
Mhm.
it doesn't feel like it when you're putting it together, but it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Absolutely. Mhm.
So, and I'm going to surprise you because speaking of gifts that keep on giving, it is the season to be generous, and I'm going to be through America's Finest. I'm going to be sending you a little something for Military Outreach
Oh, okay.
Ministries. I
Thank
so
you.
appreciate everything you do, sharing not just your love, but God's love with everyone, especially around the holidays. It's such a challenging time for so many folks, especially I also support an organization called the Veterans Ranch, which
Mm,
provides services for folks, particularly with veterans who are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. And the
okay.
holidays are sometimes a struggle for
Mhm.
folks. If people don't realize it, it really,
That's right.
we need to really, we have to love each other and our
Mhm.
vets, not just at certain times during year, but all
That's
year
right.
round.
All
And
year round.
all year round, it's all about that. And
Mhm.
what a better world we'd have if people didn't forget about that.
That's right.
So thank you for reminding folks, and for your jazzy looking. I just love your logo. I have to tell my
Thank
husband
you.
he buys me a different kind of eagle every year, whether it's for an
Right.
anniversary or birthday. So I'm like,
Okay. That's
look at
cool.
that one.
I like yours too.
Someone likes shoes. Like,
Right.
it's all different. So, God bless you, Dennis, and
Really
God
appreciate you,
bless
Miss Kelly.
America. God bless our veterans. I'm going to
Amen.
be putting this all together with some helpful links. I'm also, uh, I don't want people to worry and use the wrong templates. So I'm also going to upload an ATS and government systems friendly federal resume template,
Okay.
which will help folks.
Mhm.
Because, trust me, with federal resumes, we all need as
Yes.
much help as we can get.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you so much, Dennis, and have a
Thank
very
you.
Merry Christmas
You
and a
too.
happy, happy New
Appreciate you.
Year. Thank you so
Likewise.
much. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.